taking a picture of all that. I was looking at this going, wait, something's wrong here. I actually prefer it that way. So it is somewhat distracting to see yourself looking at yourself. Okay. So we're on page Shin Yud Zayin. Yesterday we saw the second answer to the question as to why it is there's a connection between Paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? The first answer was the bittul of Moshe brings to Mesiras Nefesh. Our connection to Moshe, Moshe's bittul brings to Mesiras Nefesh. That's why Moshe taught us Kriya Shema before we entered Eretz Yisrael. The second answer is the bittul of Moshe, Moshe Avdi, is expressed not in our Etzem Metzias, but rather in our actions, Kabbalah Zol. Right? And again, that prayer comes from Moshe. Our ability to be Makabbalah comes from Moshe. Hina Isa b'medrash, we saw this at the very end, but we'll see it again. I think we read it. Hina Isa b'medrash, this is where we're going. The Rebbe's going to answer the question and then answer it on a deeper level. The first answer will take us to most of this page, most of the rest of this page. Hina Isa b'medrash ala pasuk v'yikoy lecha paraduma. This is Immerse Rabbah, it's in the Tanchuma. Amar le HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, Lecha ani megal tam para v'la acher chuka. Why are they bringing the para to you? Because I'm actually bringing the para to you. In other words, I'm bringing the understanding of para to you. I'm giving you the understanding of paraduma. As we said yesterday, Shlomo Melech attempted to understand. Shlomo Melech thought that he could understand, but he couldn't. Moshe Rabbeinu understood the inyan of para. Now that obviously brings up a very interesting question. So for Moshe Rabbeinu, there's no such thing as a chayk. It seems, right? And yet you and I get our kayak from Moshe. The kayak that you and I have for Kabbalah Zol comes from Moshe. But by Moshe, there isn't anything in the mind of Mitamadas. Me relative to her mitzvah. So we'll have to see. That's what the Rebbe's going to ask right now. Tzarech lahav. The cave in Shem Moshe he see the tam to call the mitzvahs. That since Moshe Rabbeinu comprehended the reason of all of the mitzvahs, Gam hatam the mitzvahs paraduma, also the reason of paraduma, because as we said yesterday, and Rabbi will explain it much more deeply now, a choik is a level beyond tam v'das. So what we emphasized yesterday was that every mitzvah is a choik, mitzvah the fact that every mitzvah is ratzon. But it's also true that mitzvahs are yeredes lamata, they descend below, so to speak, and are clothed in chokhmah. And when the Alter Rebbe talks about Torah and mitzvahs, he talks about ritzonei v'chokhmasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's simply ritzonei. Now, you could say, Rebbe's not going to say that, but you could say that there's certain things that are simply ratzon, and there's other things that are also chokhmah. I mean, they're ratzon, everything's ratzon, but there are also things that also express the wisdom, the intellect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the seichel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But ultimately, and we saw yesterday, but now we're going to see it much more clearly, every mitzvah ultimately is clothed in chokhmah to a certain degree. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu can understand the tam of paraduma. I mean, there is a tam of paraduma. There is a chokhmah aspect of paraduma. Because every mitzvah descends below. Right? Certainly every mitzvah descends below relative to action. But even, what I was about to say, even though the source of every mitzvah is ratzon, every mitzvah also is an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chokhmah, meaning it descends and is clothed in chokhmah. What's that chokhmah? Chokhmah Hashem, chokhmah Atzilus. The chokhmah of Eilam Atzilus. What's Eilam Atzilus? A world of godly reality. Eilam Atzilus is not a created world. Why do we call it a world? Well, because there is a reality there that exists in the rest of the world. What comes into a state of revelation in Eilam Atzilus? Kelim. Right? Differentiated expressions of godly reality. It's all godly reality. It's not created reality. So what's there? What's the Atzilus the home address of? 10 spheres. Above Atzilus there are 10 spheres, but not in any revealed way. They're called spheres kenuzes. What's their home base? Basically, again, that's not our issue right now. Right? They must be above if they're revealed below. And that's one of the reasons that Atzilus is called Giluya Helim. It's the revelation of what was hidden. What was hidden? All of these different aspects of godly reality exist, but they were subsumed and, so to speak, hidden in the infinite light. What don't you see in infinite light? Any differentiation. What's there? Whatever differentiation exists in revealed light exists in light before it's revealed. It's just hidden. So the light that's out here, there's no color in the light that's out here. Once that light hits a kli, there's nothing of any color around here. Could I please have that green book? Thank you. So at least there'll be some color here in this room. I'm not very colorful, right? Once the light hits this, so then this thing reveals the fact that green exists in light. Now, I wouldn't know that. If there was nothing green in the world, I would not know that light contains the color green, right? That doesn't mean it wouldn't. It would still contain the color. I just wouldn't know that it does, right? I know Izzy would know better than me because he's so much more educated in these things. But I think it was about 1956 that God put color in the world. When did color start? Something. Everything was black and white until what, about 1956, and then
actually earlier, but it's okay.
What is a little earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. When the 40s?
40s, yeah.
Yeah, even the 40s.
Yeah, but it wasn't popular. It wasn't so popular.
Right. Okay. I remember my father, Oliver Shalom, he bought a color television for the first Super Bowl, 1967. He liked football. He liked watching football. He'd watch a game, and it's very interesting. This came up again last week, and I'm interested in asking one of my older brothers. I was the youngest. I don't think he had a team. I don't think he rooted for a team. He just liked watching. I never saw him, oh, good, they won. I don't ever remember hearing him say that. Maybe he did, but I just, as a kid, I don't remember, which is interesting. He just enjoyed watching football. He used to watch a game every week, every Sunday. There was one game in those days. Okay, so what's that color television doing? Revealing color. Was the color there before? Of course the color was there before. But now it's revealed. What's this doing? Revealing green. Right? Okay. This must be yours. There's your name on it. Okay, so what happens in Elam Atzilus? Gilui Helam, the simple pshat in Gilui Helam is, there's different pshatim also that are brought in different places, but the simple pshat in Gilui Helam, and it's brought in Basi Lagani, the Frierdiker Rebbe brings it in Basi Lagani, Ois Aleph, when he discusses Atzilus. The first thing he says about Atzilus is Gilui Helam, meaning the Kalim in Atzilus reveal these differentiated aspects of godly reality that you and I call spheres. Obviously they existed above. Obviously there's a level of chesed that is beyond chesed of Atzilus and is the source of chesed of Atzilus. But chesed comes into a state of revelation in Atzilus. Chochmah comes into a state of revelation in Atzilus. There are higher levels, Chochmah Stimad, so there are higher levels of Chochmah. Okay, but they're not in a state of revelation. When does reality become revealed? Well, reality becomes revealed when we say revealed, we mean to the other, right? When they're clothed in a kli. Now, relative to godliness, we say when they're clothed in a kli. Relative to physical light, we say when it's reflected off a kli, because the dynamic of that green is that it's reflecting green and absorbing all other colors, right? Okay, this absorbs all color, so there's no color. This reflects all light, so to speak, so there's no color per se. Right? Whereas if there's a specific color, so that it will reflect that specific color and absorb all of the other ones. Okay, so infinite godly light, we use that mashal for godliness because it works. Infinite godly light contains within it an infinite amount of expression. Okay, what brings about the revelation of that expression in the context of 10 different aspects of godly reality that you and I call spheres? The Kalim of Elam Atzilus. And for that reason, it's called Elam, because an Elam hides. And what's hidden in Elam Atzilus? Now, it's not really hidden, but there is an aspect, there's two aspects of Elokus that are hidden, and to a certain degree, they're one and the same, right? The absolute revelation of unity is hidden, because there's 10, not 1. Now, if you live in Elam Atzilus, you are not taken by the 10, you're still aware that there's 1, that it's all the same. Just like the light that's reflecting off the yellow book and the light that's reflecting off the green book are all the same. It's all the same light. Right? not like a piece of light, different rays of light. It's all the same light, all comes from the same source, it's all the same thing. Right? Okay. But what's also hidden in Elam Atzilus, we're not bothered by saying that, because he's not finite, he's also not infinite. He's beyond both. He's the source of infinite reality, you and I call that he's the source of finite reality, you and I call that Kalim. Right? He isn't infinite, but he's also not finite. Okay, but he's revealed in infinite, he's revealed in finite. And the finite is as much a revelation of him as infinite. What's it revealing? What's called Koyach HaGvul, the power of limitation that exists in Ein Sof, is revealed in finite reality. What does infinite reality reveal? Koyach HaBilti Gvul be'Ein Sof, the unlimited aspect of Ein Sof, which is more the Eibishter. The Havaya Hu Elokim. Havaya or Elokim, Kli, the names that are the source of these two different levels of reality, it's all the same. It's all him. V'yadaita yem ki Havaya Hu Elokim. Rebbe Rashab, V'yadaita Moskva, 2 pages of questioning how can we say that, because Havaya is one aspect of godliness or infinite expression, and Elokim is another aspect, Kli, very finite. How can we possibly say they're one and the same? Right? We ask the question based on the knowledge that we'll have of what those 2 names represent, and then spends 10 pages explaining to us why it's all the same. It's all one, it's all him, it's just him. This aspect of him or this aspect of him. Okay. Which is more the intellect of the teacher? His ability to understand the idea, or his ability to constrict that idea and give it over to the students? They're both equal revelations of the teacher's say. One's a revelation of revealed, or this teacher's ability to understand the idea in the first place. The second is an expression of the teacher's ability to limit that or so that it can fit into the head of the Talmud. Okay. So when the Rebbe teaches us a Maimer Chassidus, so the Rebbe obviously understands these ideas on a much, 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 much deeper level than you and I. But he's explaining it to you and I in a way that you and I can understand. And on the deepest level, what's contained within the Rebbe's explanation? Everything he knows about it. Some of it in a revealed way, some of it in a hidden way, but it's all there. Right? Meaning, if the Rebbe Rashab would hear the Rebbe saying a Maimer, he'd hear a lot more than you and I do. We go, oh, interesting, he's using this mushal, not that mushal. Interesting the order he's doing it in. Why is he doing it in that order? I taught it in that order. He's teaching it in this order. That's very interesting. What must he think about it? We know all sorts of things that I, sitting and listening to the Maimer, wouldn't hop. Why? Well, because I'm in a state of tzimtzum relative to the or of the teacher, Beseder, but the teacher is mitzam saying his or to give it into my kli. But what's really there? Everything he thinks about that idea is really there. What's a moshel in Gashmias? A good psychologist. A good psychologist hears as much from what the person doesn't say than from what he does say, or how he said it, etc., etc. A good psychologist. Because there's everything is there. It's some of it's hidden and some of it's revealed. He's telling the psychologist in a revealed way certain aspects of his reality. He's hiding certain aspects of his reality. The job of the good psychologist is to know what he's hiding, not what he's revealing. You and I can hear what he's revealing. He's saying it. I'm just not trained to hear what he's hiding. Or not hiding. He might not even be aware of the fact that he's hiding it, but the good psychologist will be, right? And will help him say, wait, you realize the way you said that and how you said that, right? And he'll find everything behind there because he's revealing it all. That's why good psychologists are scary to talk to. Because they know how cracked we really are, right? It's like, I don't want to hang around this guy. I once was involved in a young couple. They weren't so young, actually. In a couple who were having some immediate marital difficulties. I called up someone I knew who was a very good psychologist in this town. And I said, this is the story, and this is him, and this is her, and he never met them. I just basically told him the story. He said, okay, I'll see them, but I'm telling you, I don't really think much is going to happen, and I do predict, based on what you just told me, that they'll be divorced in 2 weeks. So I cost a lot of money. I'm going to give them a 7 a.m. appointment. So they're really going to have to want to come in order to come, because I don't want to take their money for nothing. Based on what you told me, it doesn't look very good. Right? But I'll give them a 7 a.m. appointment and we'll see if we can work something out. But I'll tell you the truth, I don't think they're going to show. They didn't show. They were divorced in 2 weeks. He had never met them. He just heard the story of this one and the story of this one, and he was pretty good at it. He really was. He was really very good at it. He helped a friend of mine. That's how I knew him. He really helped him, right? Like a lot. Right? And so I figured, okay, so a good psychologist can hear what's going on that's hidden behind. So in Ruchnius, what's that? That's a Shem Echad. That even in finite reality is revealing, in the truest sense, the infinite light, because that's the source of it all. Okay, where does that process begin? That dance between infinite and finite? Elam Atzilus. So the highest level of revealed Chokhmah is called Chokhmah Atzilus. So that's where mitzvahs are revealed. There's a tam of every mitzvah in that place called Chokhmah Atzilus. The Chokhmah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You and I don't understand if the tam stays there. We're going to see that Moshe does. Okay. So that's what the Medrash ultimately means when it says that Moshe, that the Eibusher said, I'm revealing to you. How, why? Well, we'll find out who Moshe is when we keep learning in the mind. Right? But our question now, the fact that the Kadosh Baruch Hu has revealed the tam of Paraduma to Moshe means that for Moshe Rabbeinu there is no chayk. So then how can Moshe be the source of us? And that's what the Rebbe asks. But Tzarech Lahavin, the Kaven Shemeshe Hesig Tam the Kola Mitzvahs, Gama Tam the Mitzvahs Paraduma, the third line in Gimel. Ech Nimshach Al Yada in the Sinas Kayach. So how is it drawn down through Moshe Rabbeinu, the empowerment, L'kiyama Mitzvahs, for the performance of mitzvahs, Ba'ofen, in a way of Chuke Chakakti Gezerah Gazarti. That it's a chayk, Kabbalah Soul, just do it. There's no seichel there, just do it. You and I experience that in a chayk. And so somehow can appreciate how that might also apply to a mishpah. We'll see what the Rebbe is about to say. But Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't experience that in any mitzvah. There's paraduma and loy signaiv for Moshe Rabbeinu are the same. At first glance, the Rebbe is going to give the first answer. Then the Rebbe is going to ask a question about this answer and give a deeper answer. That doesn't dispute the first one. At first glance, one could explain that which is written somewhere else. Now, if you look at the footnote, it's say from our melukat chelik base, and this is what we mentioned yesterday. The majority of our footnotes on this discussion of Chayk and Mishpat are going to be the Rebbe's Torah, because the Rebbe is the source of most of the deep discussion of this inyan. Rebbe, when we say learn this sugya, this is a sugya in Chassidus that the Rebbe really, really talked about a lot and developed completely. Fascinating. There are other sugyas that the Rebbe developed more completely than everybody else. The holding of Gula and Mashiach, the Rebbe clearly talked about more than anybody else and developed more than anybody else. And it's interesting how it develops. Right? So there's a secret of the Rebbe where the Rebbe says it's possible to answer this question by virtue, it could be, the Rebbe says, that there are two different kufot of Mashiach, there are two different times, periods in the Immerse of Mashiach. The first period will be simply a time of Shibud Malchus, no more Shibud Malchus, we'll have a king, and the second time will be the period of Tchias HaMes. The Rebbe says it could be Tafshin Chaf Hey. Later on in the Rebbe Sichos, that's a given. It's clear that the Rebbe figured that all out, and later on in the Rebbe Sichos, that's a given. There's no discussion about it. That's just the way it is. Which is really very interesting. How that works, I don't know. I'm not sure how that works exactly. In terms of the Rebbe Shab also. Certainly, the Rebbe Shab was saying early in my mind that he clearly had tried to understand more deeply and figured it all out, so to speak, by later Maimarim, and that was a given that helped me explain something new. It's a clear movement. Those who really know things will tell you the way that, I'm not one of them, but I've learned with one of them, so heard him talk about it, tried my best to understand. Right? Differences between the Rebbe's discussion of Ratzon and Samach Love as opposed to the Rebbe's discussion of Ratzon and Ayin Beis. The difference. Something, the Rebbe was. The Rebbe learned Torah. There are people learning Torah, trying to figure things out. It's not like they're these little robots and they flip a switch and then go back to their room. That's not. They're people learning Torah, trying to figure things out. Things are given to them from above, things they work out themselves. How it works, I don't know. It's really an interesting question, like how it all works, but it worked. So the Torah, the whole sugya of Chok and Mishpat, it's the Rebbe's sugya. And we're looking at one of the main Maimarim of that right now. It's an absolutely it's a fascinating idea, but also an unbelievably important idea for a Veda. We'll see why. We could say this based on what's written in another place. And again, the Rebbe is quoting himself. He's quoting another Maimer. Shebachol mitzvah, every mitzvah yesh shnei inyanim, two different aspects of every mitzvah. And what's that? Chukim and mishpat. Every mitzvah has its ratzon, and every mitzvah has its chokhmah. And those are two separate realities in the mitzvah. Ki kol ha-mitzvahs. Right? And this is what we said outside, and now we're going to see it inside. Gam ha-mitzvahs de'edus ha-mishpat. Right? I'm sorry, this we said before explicitly. Right? Also the mitzvahs of Edus, Pesach, Shabbos, and Mishpatim, don't kill, don't steal. Sheyesh aleim tam. Hey, mitzvah is bar, the Ratzon of Kadosh Baruch Hu, which we saw. So even though there's Chokhmah, there's also Ratzon. But Ratzon is l'mayla mitam. And Ratzon is beyond tam. L'mayla gam, now the Rebbe says something very, very important that we have to understand. And sometimes people find this difficult to understand. L'mayla gam mihataimim, also beyond the reasons, the Eibishter's Ratzon is beyond the reasons shebechachmaso yisbarach, in his chokhmah. The Eibishter's Ratzon is a higher level of godly reality than the Eibishter's chokhmah. Well, if you're into spherology, so then you understand that. What's the sphera that is the sphera that will contain within it or represent the level of Ratzon? Which sphera? We don't know, that's okay. We will have to.
What's that?
Kesser, could be a crowd. Right? Kesser. Right? And of course, Chokhmah obviously is the beginning of the three different levels of intellect. Chokhmah, the power of intellect itself, the ability to understand something. Right? When I actualize that ability, it comes into a state called Bina. When I internalize that, it comes into a place called Das. Through Das, it's internalized. Okay, but the ability to understand, the potential to ask Mazeh, Koyach Ma, the potential to ask Mazeh, which an animal doesn't have. Human intellect. Okay, so that's all. That's all Chokhmah. That's Chokhmah. Okay, the Eibush also has Chokhmah. Intellect. That's why you and I do, because he does. Okay. But that Chokhmah is not as powerful, so to speak, a level of godly reality as Ratzon, which is the source of the Chokhmah. Now, in you and I, how do we understand that, and how can we explain that so that it makes sense, as opposed to just saying that Ratzon's l'mayla mi-chokhmah and just accept it, Kabbalah soul? No. Chokhmah, your thought, your conscious intellectual reality, so you have control over that. You can decide what you're going to think about. Now, that doesn't mean that thoughts don't pop into your head, but you are then able to either think about them or not think about them. No, I don't want to think about that, go away. It's not a positive thought, I don't want to think about it. I might have been thinking about it without even noticing, okay, but then I all of a sudden reach some level of normal consciousness and I'm conscious of what I'm doing. I go, I don't want to do that. Okay, go away. Try to get rid of that thought. Okay. You can't get rid of a Ratzon. You want something. You can't not want it. You cannot think about it, speak about it, or do it. But Ratzon is not conscious you. Chokhmah is the source of conscious you. It itself is actually beyond conscious you, but it's the source of conscious you. So it's shaykh to conscious you. Ratzon is superconscious you. That's why if I want something, I can't not want it. And now, I don't have to act upon it, but I can't not want it. Whether it's a negative thing that's coming from a place below, so to speak, what you and I call subconscious, or it's something lofty that comes from a place above that you and I would call superconscious. So if there's a subconscious desire to eat a cheeseburger, God forbid. So you can't tell me don't want a cheeseburger. That's a stupid thing to tell me. You can tell me don't eat a cheeseburger. Don't think about it, don't talk about it, and don't do it. That you can tell me. That's called a Beinoni. But what can't the Beinoni do, at least in the here and now? Control his Ratzon. Can't not want it. Over time, he could not want it. The cigarette smoker, over time, will lose his desire for a cigarette. But you can't tell the cigarette smoker don't want a cigarette. That's a ridiculous thing to say to him. Forget about it, and we're talking 2 weeks after he stopped smoking, so the physical addiction is gone, but there's still the emotional connection to the whole thing. Okay, so every time he sits down to eat, immediately after eating, he has a very strong desire for a cigarette. That's what they all say. I know, Baruch Hashem, I never smoked, so I never had to quit. Because it evidently is pretty hard, because people have a hard time doing it. Okay, so now the desire for the cigarette arises. Can I tell him don't have the desire? That's ridiculous. He doesn't have control over that. He does have immediate control. In 5 years, he's not going to have that desire if he doesn't smoke for the next 5 years. He won't have that desire. But right now, he doesn't have control over that. Why? Because it's not conscious him. It's super conscious him. It's coming from a deeper place in him. What control does he have? Don't think about it. That's hard. But push it out of your thought. Don't talk about it. That's easier. Stupid thing to talk about how nice a cigarette would be right now. That's a really dumb thing to say if you want a cigarette and you don't. You mean you do and you don't. And the most important thing, just don't smoke one. Is that going to be hard? Ooh, wow. It's called iskafia, and that's really hard. For some reason, and who knows why, it's really bizarre if you think about it, we don't like not getting what we want. It's like an icky feeling. No, but I understand that's the way we're programmed, but that isn't absolutely necessary. That's just the way the Yeshiva wired us, right? That when we want something and we don't get it, it's like icky. I don't like this. Now, all I have to do is put up with that for, a relatively short period of time, and the desire will go away. But then it might come back again. Right? Depends on the desire. There's certain desires that I can rid myself of completely. All sorts of people who used to smoke cigarettes have no desire for cigarettes anymore. Matter of fact, they find the smell as disgusting as the rest of us find it. And when someone who just smoked a cigarette walks by them, they go, oh, an ashtray just walked by. It's a horrible smell, which they don't smell because it also dulls their sense of smell. Right? But it's a horrid habit. Okay, fine. But they're not aware of that. Fine. So there will come a point that over time where they can completely change their desires so that they no longer desire a cigarette. And every single one of us has done that. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu does that for us within the context of the fact that I would imagine just different years for Izzy and different years for me and different years for the two of you. But within a certain period of time, whether it's 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, we liked playing with little trucks. And now I don't. I wanted to go vroom, vroom, vroom on the ground with a little tinker toy. And Lego, I made a gun and went boom, 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 because I was a little boy. Little girls don't do that. Little girls don't go boom, 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 boom with trucks. They just don't. And they don't make guns out of Lego. They just don't. I don't know why, but they don't. They're wired differently, contrary to popular belief. Right? They're just completely different. That's why our daughter is so happy to have a little girl in her house after two little boys who are like, real little boys. They walk around like this all the time. Right? None of our daughters or granddaughters have ever broken windows in a fit of anger or interest. We had 2 windows broken by children who were angry. The window to the porch that we put them on when they kicked it because they were angry that they were sent out there. They paid the price. They paid the price. Those 2 boys, And our grandson in Australia just found a hammer in the house and thought it would be interesting to hit the hammer on the glass that separates the pool from where everybody else can go. And he banged with the hammer on the glass. Little girls don't do that, right? Little boys do that. Bang, he banged the hammer, right? So now, is he going to want to do that in 5 years? No, because his ratzon will change. But he was fascinated by this form. And ended up with a bark shell, only a little tiny splinter in his foot, and nothing happened, and yeah, they fixed the glass, what are you gonna do? Shlomo! What do you do? They call him Mobo. He's an Australian. Okay, fine. Our ratzon changes, but we don't have immediate control over not wanting. We do have immediate control over not thinking, not speaking, and not doing, because that's conscious me. That's the difference between what's called makif and what's called panimi. In powers of the soul. Okay. And so ratzon is truly beyond chokhmah, because I do have control over what I'm thinking about, but I don't have control over what I want, immediate control over what I want. It's a deeper place in me. Tanug, interesting, I can have a certain amount of conscious control over tanug, but not immediately. Right? But I can decide that I want to like whiskey because people will think I'm cool. And I can acquire a taste. It's called an acquired taste, right? Okay. Give whiskey to a child and go, yeah, and he's right. It's there. Why would anybody want to drink this stuff? Okay, but adults seem to think that if you drink whiskey and you talk about it, you're cool. So they acquire the taste. And they actually enjoy it. They start to enjoy it. Right? Dry red wine. Okay, that's an acquired taste. It's not a natural thing to like something that's that, sort of bitter. Okay, but people can acquire the taste for it. Probably if someone had never ever had anything like that, and then you gave it to him, his first reaction would probably not be positive. Just like a cigarette. No one likes their first puff. Who takes a cigarette when they're 16? Oh, this is really nice. He starts to cough, and it's terrible. Right? But for some reason, later on, he will enjoy it. He'll enjoy it. Absolutely. An acquired taste. So I can actually affect my timing. But again, over time. Only over time. Thought? Get rid of it right now. Affecting chokhmah itself is obviously difficult. Because chokhmah is this bridge between superconscious and conscious. So I can't affect my IQ. Right? I mean, my parents can affect my IQ. By stimulating me intellectually as a child, they'll bring up a child who probably has a more active intellect. Just like if they teach the kid to catch a ball, he'll probably be able to catch a ball. He'll be a more athletic kid if they teach him to do that. If you use the muscle, it usually works better. Okay, so that's how we see the ratzon is l'mayla min hatam. The ratzon is l'mayla min hatam. L'mayla gam mi'atayim shebechokhmasa yizbarach. The ratzon of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Keser, is a level of elokus beyond chokhmah, and is the source of chokhmah. Chokhmah comes from Keser, not the other way around. So there are things that, so to speak, the ratzon, the chokhmah of the Eibishter can't understand. Why? Not because the chokhmah of the Eibishter is limited, but because that reality doesn't exist in chokhmah. Because chokhmah is what it is. What's one of the things the Eibishter can't explain to you? Why he had a taiva for a dir b'tachtonim. That's coming from a place beyond his chokhmah. The source of dir b'tachtonim is not the Eibishter's chokhmah. It's somewhere much, 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 much deeper in him. Atzmus, ultimately is what we say. Somewhere up there in Atzmus there was a taiva for a dir b'tachtonim. Why? Well, that's exactly why Chazal call it a taiva. Because it can't be explained rationally. And even after it happens, it can't be explained rationally. As opposed to a ratzon, the word ratzon as opposed to taiva, mitaveh, the verb mitaveh, to have a taiva, as opposed to the word rotzeh. Why does Chazal use this as opposed to that sometimes? Rotzeh is a level of ratzon which is l'mayla mitam v'das. It's beyond intellect, but there are many ratzonot that can be explained by intellect. Why do I want a cup of coffee in the morning? I don't know. I've become accustomed to the fact that A nice warm, it's not going to be warm anymore. A nice warm cup of coffee is nice, and somehow we think it helps us wake up, which is, who knows whether that's true or not, right? But we're convinced that it is, so we're tired if we don't drink it. Okay. Now, you might also get physically addicted to it, so you get a headache if you don't have it. Some people do, some people don't. Right? Okay. So I can explain to you why I want a cup of coffee. My throat hurts. Go home, make myself a cup of tea. Why did I want tea? Because my throat hurts. The desire for tea is beyond Chabad, but I understand why. As opposed to walking in on a day like today, and you've just walked for half an hour in the hot sun, and you were wearing your coat, your jacket and your hat because you had nowhere to put them, and so you're pretty hot, and you walk in and you say, I just have a taiva for a cup of tea. That's a taiva. Not a bad taiva. Nothing wrong with it. But I have a taiva for a cup of tea. Why? Because rationally that's not a reasonable thing to want. But the last 10 minutes of the walk, you've been thinking, I don't know why. I just want a hot cup of tea. That's a ridiculous thing to want. What should you want? Cold water. That's what you should want. And you won't even make it to your stomach. You'll feel it sort of spread out and hydrate you even before it gets down to your stomach, which is a great feeling. Have a taiva for a cup of coffee, for a cup of tea. Okay. Ula'achrei shel rotzen the mitzvahs, middle of the paragraph. After the rotzen the mitzvahs. Gam mitzvahs the chukim. Also the mitzvahs of chukim. Va'afilu mitzvah paraduma, and even mitzvahs paraduma. Nimshach v'nislavesh b'chochma the Torah is drawn down and clothed in chochma. The chochma of the Eibishter is the source of the chochma of Torah. Nisvasef b'hem, it's added to them tam. I mean, there is a tam of paraduma. There's definitely a tam of paraduma. How do I know that? Well, the Eibishter was Megala something to Moshe Rabbeinu. So that was the tam of paraduma. The chochma of paraduma. So to say this in the lashon of Chassidus, which is a lashon we have to learn, it's a language we have to learn. There's a ratzon of every mitzvah, but every mitzvah is also nimshach lamata, drawn down below, and is mislavesh, clothed b'chochma, in intellect. There's a chochma of every mitzvah. Now, down here, there's different levels of the chochmah of every mitzvah, okay? So we have to make sure we understand which level we're talking about. There's a level of chochmah of every mitzvah, which is the Talmud Torah of that mitzvah, which also applies to paraduma. Right? Paraduma, you have to learn the psukim, and learn the midrashim, and learn the halachas, and learn Hilchos paraduma in the Rambam, and then you'll understand the halachas of paraduma. That's all chochmah, right? But that's not the level the Rebbe's talking about here. The Rebbe's talking about, so to speak, the why of it. Why paraduma? Not what. Every mitzvah obviously has a chochmah of what. How do you keep Shabbos? I don't have to learn Hilchos Shabbos. Right? What's Hilchos Kiloyim? Shatnez. Well, you have to know that this is wool and this is linen. You have to know all that. If you don't know all that, then you can't possibly not be able to the Averu. Okay, so there's that aspect of chochmah of every mitzvah, which is the Talmud Torah of every mitzvah. And paraduma is exactly the same as any other mitzvah. We're not talking about that level of chochmah of the mitzvah. We're talking about the why of the mitzvah. The tam of the ratzon. Right? Not the what of it, the why of it, which is a different question. But the what of it is exactly everything. Oh, so even paraduma has a why. Well, it has a because. Everything can have a why. It has a because. And Moshe Rabbeinu knows the because. You and I don't. Now, the Rebbe is going to explain how that works, why that is. Okay, fine. But by virtue of the fact, and it makes perfect, you can't say anything else. Once Chazal tell us, like the Rebbe quotes that Chazal, that's a Medrash Rabbah, it's in Tanchuma, it's not some esoteric Medrash that is stuck away in some little corner. It's in Medrash Rabbah, it's in Tanchuma, right? Downtown Medrash. Right? And even if it's stuck away in a corner, obviously it's true. But here it's something. It's there for the learning. So there in that medrash it says the Moshe Rabbeinu was taught the tam of paraduma, which means it has a tam. Even though it's a choik, it has a tam. So now we have to understand, so then what's the difference between a mishpat and a choik? Because they both have a ratzon and they both have a tam. So then what's the difference between this and this? So let's see what I'm going to explain. V'achiluk bein ha-mitzvahs de'edus u'mishpatim. And the difference between the mitzvahs of edus and mishpatim, la mitzvahs dechukim hu, to the mitzvahs of chukim is, since we just said that every mitzvah has a tam, every mitzvah has a ratzon, every mitzvah has a chokhmah, so then what's the difference between a mishpat and a choik? Sheba mitzvahs de'edus u'mishpatim, ha-taimim sheba chokhmasu yizbarech, the reasons that exist in the chokhmah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for this mitzvah, nimshachu, are drawn down, v'nislavshu, and clothed b'seichel anivroim, in the seichel of the created things, meaning first in angels, but ultimately, v'ad b'seichel anashim, until human intellect. Meaning the chokhmah of don't kill is nimshach all the way down into Eilam Hazeh Gashmi, and human intellect has some intuitive understanding, don't kill, and why not to kill. And we can explain to you rationally why kill. Now, do I know that my reason is the same as the Abish's reason? No, but there is a reason. And there's no, and anybody who's got any brain whatsoever can explain to you why don't murder is a good idea. And don't steal is a good idea. I'm going to have a little harder time when it comes to don't wear wool and linen together. And what's my answer going to be? If someone asks me, why don't you wear wool and linen together? Because God said so. Now, really, the reason when someone asks me, why don't you murder, I should give exactly the same answer. But it's possible that I might clothe the answer in intellect. I can't clothe shatnez in intellect, because there isn't any intellect of it. I have no clue. God said so. I don't know why. Okay. Don't murder? I can talk about that intellectually. Not only can I, there's books and books and books written, philosophy talking about, society. Okay. Uba mitzvahs techukim, 4 lines up in the bottom of the paragraph. Hatamim shelahem, the reasons of the mitzvahs of chukim. There is a reason. We just learned there's even a reason in Paraduma, and the Eibusha told Moshe Rabbeinu what that reason is. So every mitzvah has its tam. But so then those chukim, what about their reasons? Loini slavshu. Now the Rebbe says kol kach. We have to talk about that because it's so fascinating. Loini slavshu kol kach b'seichel l'nivraim. It hasn't been clothed so much in the seichel of nivraim. Now the Rebbe doesn't say, I understand it's parenthetical, but the Rebbe doesn't say they aren't clothed at all in the seichel of nivraim. They are. We'll have to see why. But let's read to the end of the paragraph first, and we'll come back to that. Vatam de mitzvahs paraduma, and the tam of mitzvahs paraduma, where is it? Hu b'chachmas yizbar. Chachma datzilus. If you live in Atzilus, then the Chokhmah, the Tam of Paraduma is revealed to you. Now, we're going to see that Moshe Rabbeinu lives in Atzilus, right? Which is really quite astounding. Right? Okay, but if you live in Atzilus, so then Paraduma is revealed to you. So it's not a problem. It's not a chayk. I mean, still a chayk because objectively, it's a level of Chokhmah that hasn't descended down into Eilam Hazeh Gashmi, we say that, but for you, it's not. Hasn't been drawn down at all into the seichel of nivraim, even on higher spiritual levels. An angel doesn't understand the paraduma. It might be an angel understands shatnez, which we'll talk about in a second. Might be an angel can explain to you, based on the angel's understanding of reality, and the angel experiences metaphysical reality, not physical reality. He can explain to you based on metaphysical rules of thumb why wool and linen are a bad idea. I mean, he can predict, so to speak, that down there we're not going to be able to wear wool and linen. But you can't see it in the laboratory. We'll go back to that 1 second. V'zeh shemeshe hisig tam para, and that which Moshe understood the tam of para, ulefishe gam b'yesel lamata, that even when he was below, haya bechinas chokhmah datzilus begilui, he was on the level of chokhmah datzilus begilui. Now the Rebbe is going to explain this more later, but basically what the Rebbe just said is an absolutely astounding idea. Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality was Chokhmah Datzilus. Avram Avinu's conscious reality was not Chokhmah Datzilus. Is there a level of Avram Avinu's neshama that exists in Atzilus, and therefore that level of the neshama experiences Chokhmah Datzilus in a revealed way? Yes. And you know what? That applies to every single one of us in this room, not just Avram Avinu. Every single one of us, there's an aspect of our neshama that lives in Elam Atzilus. Chaya shebenefesh. You say it every day. Neshama shenasata bi tahari. It's in Elam Atzilus. Tabarasa came into Elam Abrim. Tayetzarta came into Elam Yetzirah. Tanafachta bi is clothed in a physical body in Elam Hazak. We say it every day. In Elokai neshama. Tahari. What's Tahari? Elam Atzilus. Comes in a place of absolute godliness. It's the source of the neshama. That's the revealed source of the neshama that's nimshach lamata. But what? I'm not conscious of that part of me. That's not my conscious reality. My conscious reality is Elam Hazeh Gashmi. Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality was Elam Atzilus. There was no, we're going to see later in the Maimon, the Rebbe is going to talk about the idea of Moshe Bli Psik Beinei. Hashem, Kel Rachum V'Chanam, there's a psik. Meaning when we, obviously in the Sefer Torah there isn't, but in Tamim, there's a psik. There's a separation in between the first Hashem and the Hashem, because there's two different levels of Shem Havaya. Avram, psik beineim. Yaakov, psik beineim. Mesha, ein psik beineim. What does that mean? So it's explained in Chassidus. Avram Lamaila, there's a separation of Avram Lamata from Avram Lamaila. The separation of Avram below from Avram above. As great as Avram was, obviously less of a separation than you and I experienced, but still a separation. Yaakov, same thing. Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality when he was walking around in Olam Hazeh Gashmi was Chokhmah Datzilus, which is just, Moshe Rabbeinu saw godly reality in his conscious day-to-day. Right? Was it Pel Dabra, right? He talks to God like you and I talk to the wall. It's not like you and I talk to the wall, because when we talk to the wall doesn't answer. God answers it. He has a problem with Am Yisrael, he turns to a Kadosh Baruch Hu and says, what's feels do from me? What do you want from me? Wow. Which is really interesting. I mean, it's more than interesting, it's just incredible. Moshe Rabbeinu has no one else to talk to. Who's he going to talk to? Who's going to understand his reality and his experience? There's only one being that does it. That being is the Abraham. He can talk to his wife and commiserate. He can talk to Aaron HaKohen, I'm sure, and commiserate about certain things, but there are certain things that he can only turn to one being and go to the Abraham. What do you want? It's astounding. And he's this person walking around in Elam Hazeh. Right? Ish Elokim. What did Chazal say? It's brought, I believe it's brought later in the Mysticism, as I recall. What did Chazal say? Moshe Rabbeinu is called Ish Elokim. Right? So what? Chazal, it's a medrash. It's not some esoteric Hasidic idea that a Rebbe said in a Farbrengen, which is true, but someone might say, "Oh, I don't have to believe that." No. If the Lubavitcher Rebbe says something, you and I believe it. There might be Jews out there who say, look, I'm not a Lubavitcher Chassid, I don't have to listen to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I would disagree with him, but okay to say. If there's a Medrash Chazal, he's not allowed to say that. Right? Okay. There's a Medrash Chazal that says very, very clearly, when the Pasuk says, Meisha Ish Elokim, what does that mean? Mipo Lamaila Elokim, Mipo Lamata Ish. That's Moshe. Moshe is someone whose conscious reality is Chokhmah Datzilus. So where is the tam of Paraduma? There, Chokhmah Datzilus. So Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality appreciates what Chokhmah Datzilus is about. So Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality understands what Paraduma is about. Wow. Okay, let's just go back up to that idea of mitzvahs, the chukim, the timing, shalom, lili, such a kol kach, the seichel nivloy. We talked about this yesterday a little bit. Shatnez, for example. Shatnez, wool and linen. So you and I can't understand. In a laboratory, I can't see any difference between a suit that has linen, a wool suit that has linen and a wool suit that doesn't have linen. There's no difference whatsoever. And the doctor is not going to tell the person that this is not healthy to wear these two things together, and no one's going to say that. The mystic will. Why will the mystic tell you not? Because he'll say, well, it says in the Torah. Okay, there is a level of metaphysical reality that we know about. We don't understand it as clearly as we understand physical reality, but we know about the existence of these different levels of reality. And on those levels, it makes sense not to mix wool and linen, because wool represents chesed and linen represents gevura. And we actually have a very clear point in history where we are taught that those two things, when they come together, produce negative results. Cain and Hevel. What did Hevel bring? Sheep, wool. What did Cain bring? Flax, linen. Wow, that's really interesting, no? But that's all Ruchnius. That's not Gashmius. That's not down here in Elam Hazeh Gashmi. But there is that's why the Rebbe says Lo Nislav is kol kach b'seichel haneshi. You and I can't explain it based on human intellect terms, but we can explain it based on godly intellect terms that human intellect can understand, because we learn Torah. And so there will be chukim that will descend down into a certain level of reality, so we'll have some achizah there, we'll have some understanding. But again, it's not a gashmistic understanding, it's a ruchnistic understanding. It's an amazing idea, right? You didn't know that about Shatnez, did you, right? I also didn't, someone told me that. It's nice to learn these things, you go, wow, that's really interesting. Okay. And so that's an example of the chayk. It's not a mishpat, it's a chayk. But there is some aspect of tam, albeit on the spiritual level. Chesed, Gvura, Cain, Hevel. Okay. First cup of coffee in the day is usually warm. If I drink a second cup, which Baruch Hashem I don't always do, but if I do, it's at home, and my wife, God bless her, bought me a what do they call it, espresso machine way back. And when that broke, she got me another one. So I have an espresso machine at home, and I can make a good cup of coffee. But I always make it, and then fill the cup with ice, and have an iced coffee. I don't grind it up, I just drink cold coffee, and it's delicious. In between, it's not as good as the hot or the cold. That's just the way it is. Okay, let's go a little further. Now, this was all to help us understand how Moshe Rabbeinu can be the source of our ability to perform, whatever, connect to the chayk. Because we asked the question, if for Moshe there's no chayk, so then how can he help us? How can there be a scene of carried from him where there's no such thing? Okay. And this is the reality in all mitzvahs. There's these two different levels of chukim and mishpatim. Shemitzad ha-ratzah the mitzvahs, mitzad the will of mitzvahs, the chayk of the mitzvah. Kol ha-mitzvah same chukim. The kiyumam and the performance of the mitzvah, sarach liyos b'derech kabbalah sol, has to be in the way of kabbalah sol. Hukechakakti gezerah gezarti. I said so. And every mitzvah has that. And so you and I have to relate to the mishpat that way also. All right? And now we can already see what the answer is going to be on this level. You and I also do exactly the same thing relative to most mitzvahs, that we have to see the chayk in it, even though there is a mishpat of it. So Moshe Rabbeinu does that about every mitzvah. You and I do it about most mitzvahs. But okay, Moshe also has to do that, and therefore Moshe can give us the koyach to do that. There's a mitzvah that's relevant to every mitzvah by Moshe, and relative to you and I, there's certain mitzvahs where we'll call them chukim. So the seichel doesn't conceal the ratzon, not overcome by the seichel of it, by the intellect of it. Okay, but that's why Avodah is to not be overcome by the seichel of it. Moshe Rabbeinu has that with every mitzvah. You and I have it with most mitzvahs. Okay, so we've answered our question. So we get koyach from Moshe to do this, to see the chayk in everything. Adarabah. Moshe does that even more than you and I, because he has to even see the chayk in a paraduma. You and I don't. The chayk is absolutely obvious. Umitzad inyan de tamei mitzvahs. Kol mitzvahs are mishpatim. All mitzvahs are mishpatim. Every mitzvah has a tam. The kiyumam tzarich liyah is gam mitzad a tam, and therefore the performance of the mitzvah also has to be mitzad a tam. And you and I are challenged to understand the tam. Right? We learn Torah, and we're told to learn Torah. We're not told to just do what the Eibishter wants like blind sheep. We're just going to do it because he said so. Well, it's not true. We are told to do it only because he said so. But we're also told to understand it in as deep and sophisticated a level as possible. Both. Yiddishkeit. Truth. Not this extreme or that extreme. No. Both. And that's usually what truth is. Truth encompasses all reality, not just one aspect of reality. It's all faith. No. There's also seichel. It's all seichel. No. There's also faith. That's Yiddishkeit. As opposed to science on one hand and, most religions on the other. Right?
Rabbi, so we saying, is he saying that Moshe, even though he's somewhat zealous, but there still has to be some of it that he doesn't understand?
No, not saying that.
So he can understand the whole...
Everything. But he has to do it because the Kadosh Baruch Hu said so, not because he understands it. Well, you and I are the same. Where do we get that koyach from? Moshe Rabbeinu. On a certain level, Moshe Rabbeinu is more powerfully that. Why? Well, because there's nothing that he doesn't understand. In terms of mitzvahs. There's no tam of a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah where he doesn't understand the tam. And yet he'll still do paraduma. Why? Kadosh Baruch Hu said so. And why will Moshe Rabbeinu not murder? Kadosh Baruch Hu said so. You and I, why don't we murder? Kadosh Baruch Hu said so. Right? But that's an avodah. That's not natural. That's an avodah. You and I won't wear shatnez. Why? Kadosh Baruch Hu said so. That's not avodah. If you believe in the Torah, you're not going to wear shatnez because the Kadosh Baruch Hu said so. Why did he say so? I haven't got a clue. I have no idea whatsoever. So in that mitzvah, the intellect doesn't hide the chayk. In don't murder, it does. So I might be inclined not to murder because it makes sense not to. And I have to do real avodah to get to the point where I'm not murdering because the Kadosh Baruch Hu said not to. It's no such avodah in paraduma for me. There is for Moshe, interesting enough. Whatever avodah is for Moshe. Right? So now Moshe becomes the ultimate source of the ability to see the chayk in everything, because Moshe sees the chayk in everything, even paraduma has to see the chayk in it, because by him it has a tam. This is an amazing idea. We'll finish the next period. By virtue of the fact that Moshe knew the reason for para, he performed this mitzvah also mitzad hatam, Because after all, there's an aspect of performing mitzvahs because of tam. You are supposed to have the awareness and understanding, al pi human intellect, that murder is a bad idea. And if you don't have that, there's something wrong with you. That isn't necessarily the reason you don't murder, but you should have that sensibility. In all fairness, the society that we live next to, the reason that I think most of us find them very hard to respect is they don't have that sensibility. And we find that very, very hard to relate to. Murder by them is just not a big deal. It's part of the free will, 50-50. What a disgusting culture. Now that has, okay, to say that has to do with us, but it has to do with their daughters who were caught with the wrong guy in the village. They'll just kill them. What's wrong with these people? What kind of society is this? And I don't, honestly, personally, what my personal reality isn't of no importance to you, but I don't hate Arabs. I have no respect for them whatsoever. None. I don't hate them. There's all sorts of nice ones. The guys walking around here doing the fixing, you say good morning to them. There's a couple who are very, very, very friendly. They're nice guys. Might they stab you in the back? Yes. Yes. There's no question that happens. Right? Because you can't trust them as far as you can throw them, unfortunately, which is pretty heavy, because we don't really want to relate to people that way. But you can't, so don't. That being said, my friend will die in the morning, how you doing, Bokuto? The society is just a horrible society. They still like hummus. There's something wrong with them. Okay, fine. No respect. Why? They're into murder. They have no sensibility whatsoever. It's not such a good idea. It's funny because in the Medrash, their problem isn't murder, their problem is stealing. You're into that too, right? They've created this whole myth about how this place is theirs. They have a whole myth about it. It's like a whole very, very sophisticated myth. Right? Who did Avram take to sacrifice on the mountain, according to them? Yishmael. They just lie and make it up, and then it turns into reality. Say it enough, and people will believe it. Palestinian myth. There's no such thing as Palestinian people. Find me a coin. Find me something. Find me some remnant of a people called Palestinians. Find me a remnant somewhere. There's no such thing. Why? There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. And we also bought into it and start calling them that. There's no such thing. Misplaced Jordanians and Lebanese and all that. Can you find the ancient Lebanese stuff buried in the ground in Lebanon? Absolutely. There's stuff down there that'll have some king who was. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay. But you and I have some sensibility, and we're supposed to have that sensibility. And so we're supposed to appreciate the tam of not stealing and the tam of not murdering. Moshe Rabbeinu can experience the tam of paraduma, which is really amazing. Mashen came b'kol echad. That's not the case of anybody else. Kiyam mitzvahs paraduma mitzad tam. Now, interesting enough, the Rebbe says there is a tam, even in paraduma for us. What's the tam? So the Rebbe says, and this is true because this is how we talk about paraduma. Kiyam mitzvah paraduma mitzad tam hu zeh shemizbeinen. You and I have to do this now that we've learned this mimer. Shegam mitzvah zu yesh la tam. It has a tam, I just don't know it. So there, even for you and I, there's now a tam of paraduma. The appreciation of the fact that paraduma has a tam, but it's a tam that comes from a place called Chachma Batzilus, and I'm not there. That's the tam of paraduma for you and I. Now, it's not a why, but there is a tam. There is some intellect there. Mitzad the etzem mitzias of the mitzvah, not the what of it. The essential reality of the mitzvah. Okay. Moshe Rabbeinu's tam of paraduma is exactly the same as his tam of don't murder. And so the Rebbe's thing and explain, and we'll see this tomorrow morning first thing. No shir Sunday, okay? The decision was that after an off Shabbos in the summer there will be no Chassidus the following Sunday because, and it makes perfect sense. I've been calling for this for a long time because I'm one of the people who teaches the class and half the class isn't there. Because they get back very, very late. Shabbos ends at 8:30. There's no way if you went up north, you're on a bus before 10, which means you get in at 1 and you're in bed at 2. So it's not fair to tell the kid, okay, you have to be in Chassidus at 7:30 in the morning. So he doesn't get up. Well, so he misses Chassidus. That's also no good. So there's no Chassidus Sunday morning. In most yeshivas, there's no Chassidus Sunday morning after an off Shabbos. They, as a matter of fact, don't even come back Sunday. They're at home. They come back Sunday morning. There's no Sunday morning b'chlal in most yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael if there's an off Shabbos. They go home, and then they get on a bus Sunday morning back to yeshiva. So Sunday afternoon they start learning. Now, obviously, our guys don't do that because they know where to stay. They're not home. They're in some, hospital or something. So they come back home, which is their beautiful dorm room in the new Mayanot World Center. The World Center. Okay. The mimer's starting to heat up, and you start to appreciate that the Rebbe's going to take us somewhere quite amazing with this mimer. He's just starting. Because he's going to say that, no, but this isn't enough.
Talking about certain cultures, the concept of murder.